We're good to start. Joe, I can't see you. Is your camera on? Okay. Hello. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to a new session of Chamber Talk with a new topic that's quite interesting and emerging: the evolving role of data and analytics and artificial intelligence during disruption. For first-time joiners, I am Sultan Hatoum from Abu Dhabi Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and I'm glad to have you all in the 14th session of the program. Today, we're hosting the panel from Gartner for the third and unfortunately the last time during Chamber Talk. As usual, the sessions with Gartner are always interesting. 6 weeks ago, we have kicked off Chamber Talk with the team on post-COVID-19 strategic thinking, pivoting and adapting to the new normal. And later, towards the end of June, we've had the second session on top 10 strategic technology trends that organizations need to explore in 2020. If you didn't get the chance to join or be part of it, you can watch both sessions on the Chamber's Facebook page and YouTube channel. So the discussion in today's session will be more focused towards AI while addressing some topics related to data, given it's the foundation of AI. The team will start by providing an overview of AI and will then move to talk about AI use cases and AI-related governance and skill sets requirements, in addition to the journey from BI to AI, and we'll then end with lessons learned. To put things in perspective, I'll start with a quick intro about the controversial topic. So as we are witnessing the emergence of a fourth industrial revolution, where technology is more accessible, more widely used, and more seamlessly integrated than ever, AI sits at the core of it in reshaping the world as we know, and is probably the one common technology among all emerging technology trends. Of all the technologies that drive digital transformation in an enterprise, people often consider AI as perhaps the most disruptive of all, as it is changing value chains from start to finish. As mentioned earlier, data is the foundation of AI. So the growth in data is a key driver of AI. Data makes AI smarter, more relevant, and more accurate. The increase in data provides AI technologies such as machine learning with the ability to uncover patterns and learn from them to take new actions that aren't explicitly programmed. Algorithms based on neural networks learn and classify a user's preference. From movies streamed on Netflix, music listened to on Spotify, or products purchased on Amazon, providers can then recommend content tailored to a specific user. So in a nutshell, AI is considered an umbrella term for a collection of technologies ranging from machine learning and rules-based systems to natural interfaces, including speech, vision, and natural language processing. In simple words, it can aid production by performing tasks that are too difficult or time-consuming for a human. Talking about humans, AI is expected to lead some job displacement, initially in routine activities. The McKinsey Global Institute has estimated that work activities equivalent to 15%, that's for 100 million of full-time employees, could be automated by 2030. So over the coming years, ongoing advances in AI will have profound impacts on jobs, skills, and HR strategies in virtually every industry. Underlying the fact that companies don't have the luxury of time as they map out their plans for an AI-enabled world, so businesses, industry influencers, and decision makers must develop better AI capabilities and move rapidly to identify how they'll drive value from AI to stay ahead of the curve, or they will face playing catch up in the years to come. So where do the UAE and the Chamber stand from all of this? Well, as we are used to the pioneering approach of the wise leadership of the UAE and the government, UAE was the first and only country to establish a Ministry of Artificial Intelligence. It has even went further by creating the first ever graduate level research-based artificial intelligence university of its kind to lead in this matter, in this smarter digital era through the Mohammed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence. And for the Chamber, we as well have our AI strategy developed for the next 3 years with more than 40 use cases. And this is part of our digital transformation. So you think you know how disruptive AI is? I'll leave for the Joe and the team to let you think again. Stephanie, floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure and Gartner's pleasure to be hosting this last session with Abu Dhabi Chamber in the Chamber Talks program. I will not speak a lot. The people who attended the previous sessions, I think now have an idea about Gartner and what we do. And today the topic is really interesting and controversial, and Joe has a lot to say. So I will give the floor to Joe to kick off his presentation and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Sultan. Thank you, Stephanie. So thank you, everybody, for attending this session, the 14th session in the Chamber Talk and the third session that is led by Gartner. During last session, we talked about the top 10 technology trends that are impacting 2020. And part of these trends, we discussed how COVID has accelerated digital transformation. We're expecting a new norm, which is more digital fast forward, which is more uncertain, and which is more optimized. And technology will play a key component in this new norm. Now, as we look at the top 10 strategic trends, such as hyper-automation, customer experience, human augmentation, distributed cloud, autonomous things, AI security, it is AI which will empower most of these trends. AI will be a key component going forward. And all of these 10 trends that we have highlighted have some sort of AI embedded. Now, first, I would like to start with a simple question. How would you rate your understanding of artificial intelligence before this session? Well, just I wanted to give you some statistics about AI. AI has been used a lot in the past few days and in the past few years, I would say. And a lot of us think that we are a bit behind in our AI journey. So you probably think you're behind in AI, but actually you're not. Just 1 of 7 CIOs or chief information officers or digital leaders say they employ AI today in its correct form. However, CEO think it's the most important advanced technology. And that's why if I really wanted to highlight a key trend that everybody's talking about these days, it is artificial intelligence, how it can help mitigating COVID, how it can help in taking better decisions, how it can empower my workforce, how it can accelerate my business while reducing costs. So it's a very important advanced technology that everybody's talking about. And this is reflected in numbers. Apologies for the header. If we look at the numbers between 2018 and 2019, we've noticed that there's further focus on AI. The dark blue percentage in the graph shows that 14% of a survey that we've conducted of our customers have already invested and deployed AI in 2019 versus 4% in 2018. So what we notice is the percentage of respondents who are thinking about AI, actively experimenting, has increased. And even we're expecting in 2020 a bigger increase going forward. So a 10-point increase in those who already invested and deployed AI just in a 1-year period. AI will stretch into the most aspects of your organization. It will be embedded in everything. So when we asked workers, we found out that 2 over 3 of the workers agree more than not with the statement that AI will actually help them at work. 3 over 5 of the workers agree more than not with the statement that I don't want AI to change my role. So they're happy to have AI, but they don't want it to change their role. And 3 over 5 also agree more than not with the statement that AI will reduce my career opportunities. In order to be more comfortable with AI, really you need to know AI better. So 3/4 of all workers believe AI will result in a net decrease in jobs. But those who have seen it work believe it will result in a net increase in jobs is only 1/8. So for us to really evaluate AI and its impact, we really need to understand it, be comfortable with it. So because the results that we're getting are slightly different than our initial assumptions. So just a couple of things. People are likely to think AI will help them at work, but are also likely to be concerned about the impact of AI on their career and their jobs. But when they see it in actions, their fear diminishes. So the results of the AI is actually resulting in workers being more comfortable with AI. So what is AI? Let's start initially by aligning about the definition of AI. I would like you to think as I talk about what do you define AI? How do you see it? I have certain people believing that AI might be automating a certain process by adding a digital signature, automating a task, applying advanced analytics. So how would you define AI? The long definition of AI would be it is a technology that can perform like human and learn. It comes with its own conclusion. It understands content and data and complex challenges. It engages in natural discussions with people. It can imitate us to a certain extent. It can replace us as well in non-value adding tasks. Well, as Gartner can tell you that the AI definition is evolving. However, it is important for every institution and every entity starting an AI journey to have a very clear definition of AI where all the key stakeholders are aligned to. In simple terms, and this is the latest definition I would say, but again, it keeps evolving with time, AI is a discipline that applies advanced analysis and logic-based techniques, including machine learning, to interpret events, support and automate decisions, and take actions. So it's maybe a lot of the things that you've thought about and you knew about AI. So I always start my AI sessions with this picture. And if you take a moment and try to recognize this, what do you think this is? I get a lot of answers for this one. In simple terms, if we use AI to recognize this, it can do it quite quicker than us. So as you see, this is simply an elephant name, right? Some of us have found it out, definitely, but it took us some time. And AI has been much more efficient than humans and much more accurate in identifying such things, especially when it comes to pictures. So the first area that I would like to cover is what are organizations looking for when they implement AI? Because any technology that you want to implement, whatever it is, really you need to have a business outcome for that technology. If you implement the best technology ever, but it is not translating into a clear, measurable business outcome that impacts your customers or citizens, then the technology has failed. And there is no ROI for that technology. So initially, the first group of people are implementing mostly AI to automate repetitive or manual tasks. What do I mean by that? A simple example, for if you have managers in the company that are spending time to approve expenses, that can be easily automated through AI. Another area that we're seeing a lot of AI implementation in is improving customer experience. We've all been touched by AI when we call a bank. Several banks in the UAE have implemented an automated conversational platform that helps us navigate the menu choices. It talks to us. Now, the experience initially has not been the best, but we're getting used to it. But the future generations will be very used to it. They will actually use it much better than the older technologies. AI also is being implemented to reduce costs and to enhance operations. And finally, AI is being implemented to augment complex tasks. If we wanted to analyze a huge set of data, AI can help us in that. When we asked our consumers and citizens what they really want out of AI, the answer is help. People want AI to help us as we take a choice. We don't want AI to do it for us. We don't want AI to take the choice from us, but we really want AI to help us. I always give an example about automated or autonomous cars. If we are driving down a lane and suddenly somebody who's walking decides to cross the street while the crossing sign is red. And we're driving and we have one of two options, either to move to the side the car, potentially injuring ourselves, our family, some of the pedestrians on the sidewalk, and maybe at the end causing some outcomes which can be severe, or potentially hitting the pedestrian who passed a red light. What would you do? What would we do? Imagine AI is driving. What would AI do? Now, there's a major difference between the two scenarios that is summarized in the slide versus helping versus do it all. We might want AI to help us take the best decision, but we really don't want to give the decision to the AI. We want to be able to take our decision in such a scenario and decide what to do. And this is an extreme scenario that outlines the difference between AI. And this applies to everything, selecting our clothes, selecting our house, when we engage with people. So that's why we always want help from AI, but we want to do it ourselves. Now, a lot of you are using AI, whether we know it or not, when we use maps in order to guide us and identify the optimal routes. These are using a type of AI. When we want to buy stuff off of different e-commerce channels, we notice these nice pop-ons coming, recommendations. You bought this, maybe you need to buy it with another package. This is because we're using AI and data analytics in order to map potential additional items you might be interested in based on your history. AI can help us in making CVs. We're hearing a lot right now that the initial interview and the initial screening process for certain positions is being conducted by AI in order to have a very fair outcome. Security is another area that can be monitored by AI. AI is available 24/7, monitoring all the CCTV cameras. So it's very easy to spot any anomaly. Monitoring health is a key area where AI can support on. Virtual assistants can also help us to monitor our health, picking our food. So as you see, AI is there in a lot of aspects in our life and is becoming more a reality in our daily life. In summary, if I wanted to implement AI, we would look at three different angles. First, improve speed and efficiency. So how does AI improve the speed and the efficiency of my processes and of my business outcomes? How can AI help my employees focus on value-adding tasks rather than repetitive tasks? The key area here is about employee augmentation, not replacement. The second area is better data processing and analytics. We're bombarded by data all across from every single angle. So how can AI better help me to really understand this data? On a similar note, I always tell people, the attendees for these sessions, is when you download a new app and decide to approve the terms and conditions, a lot of us don't read it. So imagine AI is able to analyze the terms and conditions and highlight for you any challenges or any risks. Wouldn't that be helpful? The third one is to enhance customer experience. This goes in a variety of ways, from conversational platforms, which includes chatbots, virtual assistants. All of these are actually now mainstream. And most of the organizations have enabled them in one way or another. And these have different levels of success, definitely. But their ultimate goal is to enhance experience, is to engage the citizen, and to engage the customer more, and to result in cost savings. Imagine that you leave a hospital, and when you leave a hospital, you have a set of subscriptions and medications that you need to take. You need to follow a diet. You forget about it. You lose the paper, you lose the prescription. Imagine now that you have an AI assistant with you that follows up and engages you on a daily basis and asks you, have you eaten this? What did you eat? Did you take your medicine? This is proactive engagement, and it's really helpful. It will continue engaging you and enhancing your experience and enhancing the results. So typically, if we want to categorize AI across 5 technologies, these are the technologies that we would be looking at. The first technology is machine learning and compute infrastructure. It is the technology whereby a machine learns and starts performing a particular task. The second one is natural language processing. This is the technology which is heavily used in conversational platforms and virtual assistants. Computer vision is the third technology, the ability of AI to scan thousands and millions of pictures and be able to analyze them. Data science and analytics is the fourth category, which is more related to reasoning. And finally, robots and sensors, which is related to the IoT and the data sources. So if you want to categorize the AI technology that you're doing, you can put it in these categories. You might actually employ the 5 categories combined to resolve a single business process, or you might simply attain one category of these. So it depends on your business outcome, it depends on your challenge, and that will dictate which is the best combination or technology that suits you. So I wanted to give you a bit on a high level what these technologies mean. This is not a technical discussion, but just on a high level, what do we mean by machine learning? Well, machine learning has a set of input data, which could be structured data, which we find in our typical databases, or unstructured data, which comes from social media, for example. And it gives us a set of output data. It could be predictions, forecasts, historical analysis, classifications, and all of this is done through an appropriate AI machine learning system. Now, the AI learning system can be supervised and unsupervised. Initially, it's better to go with a supervised learning system in order not to have any surprises that might have a negative impact on your image. Supervised learning system means there is a human intervention in the thinking process or in the output process. At the end, there's a human validation along the thinking process in order to resolve this issue. An unsupervised process, the whole process is done by AI with no human intervention. And we've all heard a lot of the big tech giants have had some negative outcomes out of that. So initially, maybe you would need to think more about supervising AI just to ensure that the outcome is in line with your expectations. Okay. The second one that we discussed is natural language processing. To simplify it, natural language processing is you have voice-activated devices such as cell phones, you have mobiles, phones, computers. I'm talking right now. If there was a natural language processing system in the background, it could be listening to me, and it has speech to text and text to speech conversion capabilities, and it's able to analyze the natural language and take it to a decision engine which has certain rules, etc., and come with outcomes out of it. A very simple thing could be AI analyzing what I'm speaking right now and transforming it into a text. And then the text would be taken in order to get some decisions out of it, or maybe to highlight certain phrases that I've said. So if you wanted to count how many times I mentioned AI, this could be an outcome of the system. So this is natural language processing. It is really used in conversational platforms. Chatbots is another example whereby you chat with an AI system. And honestly, what we're finding out is a lot of the people are more willing to buy from AI and are more willing to take the advice of AI and chatbots more than even humans, because they're starting to trust more the automated system, and they're starting to trust the technology. Computer vision. The third category is computer vision. We all know it. We've all heard about it. It's being used extensively. We've covered this slightly during our discussion of back to office, when we mentioned that maybe part of the technologies that will be implemented is AI, whereby it will do face matching when you enter your office. It will check if you have any particular fever. If you've met somebody that had the COVID-19, it can track them down. So CCTV is a major area where AI is being implemented right now on top of video analytics in order to provide further insights. And there's a lot of applications for AI when it comes to computer vision. This is one of them. There's a lot. It can be looking at text. It can be looking at different forms and pictures, mapping them, creating face detection or creating picture matching. And there's a wide of capabilities at this point, and it's a technology that is going more and more mainstream. And it's existed for a long period of time. The thing that came on top of it is making AI more efficient in managing the computer vision. We've talked about data analytics. Well, data analytics is changing. The journey from AI or the BI to AI is changing. Initially, data analytics used to be a bit descriptive. So what happened? So you'd use data in order to understand what has happened. Or diagnostic. Why did it happen? So if I noticed that my revenue decreased this year, I wanted to understand more why my revenue has decreased. I would crunch the numbers and come up from the data with a very clear understanding on the drivers why my revenue has decreased, or if my budget was exceeded. So that's some examples of how you can diagnose using data. And this could be run by AI. But AI is expanding, and data analytics is expanding, and the journey from BI to AI is expanding as well. So now we're noticing that AI can be used to create predictions and forecasts, what will happen. But beyond that, we want AI through data analytics to be more prescriptive and to give us an example of what should I do. So when I mentioned the example about the car driving, we want AI to support us in a split second and tell us, move to the side or continue straight. So to support my decision. If I'm buying a new set of clothes, I want to ask AI, does this look good on me? It supports my decision by coming and telling me yes or no. In the future, as AI becomes more advanced, this full decision could be automated. And this is where you see autonomous vehicles, autonomous robots, autonomous machines, whereby AI fully automates the decision. It can directly purchase. If my inventory is going down, it can directly replenish it. So that's the final step in it, where we move from descriptive analytics to prescriptive analytics. It is the analytics where AI would take the full decision at the end. Now, finally, AI is about robots and sensors. And if we discuss the concept of IoT, there's a multitude of devices out there that are going to create a lot of data. They're using devices to monitor trees' health. They're using devices. They're using a lot of devices on the conversational user interfaces, biometric devices, emotional AI, computer vision. So there's robots, there's a multitude of devices that are out there. And the ecosystem of personal devices is simply increasing. And the ecosystem of robots is also simply increasing. Now we're hearing in the recent COVID events that robots are being used to deliver medicine in hospitals. They're being used in remote areas to deliver supply through drones. And this is all is going to be governed by AI. AI will move these robots and give them further autonomy going forward and further enhancement in their operation. So the direction is to move in the future from the communication from point to more of a mesh type of communication, as we've mentioned in the previous session, whereby devices will communicate with each other. You would see a robot communicating with a robot to finish a particular task, a sensor communicating with another sensor. However, just to let you know, the AI journey is not a simple journey. It requires a lot of components to be there. And the first component is data. There's a old saying that says trash in, trash out. And it's the same thing with data. If you don't feed AI the right data, you would expect that the outcome that's going to come from AI would be suboptimal. So it is important that the foundation of any AI project is to have the right data. There are AI programs or initiatives that can actually help you cleanse the data and enhance it. But you need, for any business process that you are implementing AI in, you need to have a proper data management in place. You need to have proper data quality, proper data governance, and proper data architecture. It is the foundational component needed to enable the right use of AI and machine learning. And then it expands. Definitely, related to data, you need to have a proper business process and the proper business capability that you need to address. If you deploy the best AI solution, but there's no business impact of the AI solution, the AI solution has failed or is doomed to fail. After you identify the business solution, you make sure that you have the right data, you identify the use cases related to that. Then you move into the supporting technologies and the systems and the software engineers that are needed. So this is kind of like the AI cheat sheet, I would say, or the AI strategy and planning guide. It requires a lot of components to work together seamlessly. This is a slide I would always like to show. This is a slide back from December 2013. It's a slide that shows data at the bottom of the pyramid and the most important building block of the pyramid, followed by analytics. And that this journey continues, it becomes the algorithm, and it reaches the AI. Now, for the sake of time, I'll move a bit fast, but again, as I move through this slide, there's a lot of use cases that you're seeing. We as Gartner have more than 200 or 300 AI use cases across different industries that we've outlined. But if you look at some of the use cases like virtual assistant, chatbot, speech to text, tone analysis, are simply some of the use cases that are being used to enhance customer and citizen facing channels. You'd see it in your Netflix account where it recommends for you a particular program to view, or in your chatbot where you can communicate with it very quickly. AI vision is becoming quite important with object identification, pattern identification, people identification, video identification, event identification. And in the future, as we move into more augmented reality, AI will play a key component in order to identify the surrounding in it and provide a mixed reality, a mixed view of reality plus virtual reality. Automation is another topic. There's a lot of discussion is RPA part of AI or it is simply basic task automation? You find different views on that. But in general, automating particular tasks could be a function of AI as well. You would say robot process automation, maybe it's not purely AI, but automation in general can be considered as part of the AI process, and robot process automation could involve AI components into it. As we build smarter cities, smarter factories, and smarter buildings, we're going to get so much information. And as humans, we cannot process it. AI will process all of this information and link this information together in order to ensure things are moving quite seamlessly together. Imagine that you're driving and there's an AI driven, I would say, stop sign. So instead of waiting for all the stop signs to become green and then your turn to come, if the AI stop sign notices that there's no traffic in the other lanes, it directly turns your lane into green. That's one very simple application of AI. AI robots, you're healing a lot of the robots. They're starting to mimic human behavior. They're enhancing human capabilities. We're seeing a lot of human augmentation coming into play. We're expecting that in the future, when you go to work, you bring your own experience with you or your own extension, as we've mentioned. And this will all involve AI as well. So larger revenues and greater cost reduction is the leading rationale, again, for investing in AI as we move forward. It's becoming more of a rationale going forward. It can help a lot in creating innovative services, in enhancing your costs, and in optimizing your value. Now, AI comes with certain hurdles. The top three hurdles are skills of staff, understanding the benefits of AI, and really data. So we did a survey as Gartner, and we've noticed that when it comes to enterprise maturity to adopt AI, there is no real skills in the staff to adopt AI. So a lot of the entities I work with now are having a hard time finding AI experts. It's one of the skill sets that is quite limited, and it's one of the skill sets. Maybe if I was going now into university, it would be a field I would be majoring in. So there's a shortage in skills of the staff in order to adopt AI. The second part is data. If you don't have the right data and the right quality of data, you will not be able to have proper outcome of the AI. It will analyze the long data and it will create the wrong patterns for you. And it will take a much longer time to be able to learn and really start spotting that this data is not the right data. Understanding the AI benefits, knowing where the starting point is, and understanding, what is the use case that actually has a proper business outcome for my industry is one of the key hurdles as well. And there's a lot of other hurdles that come into play, such as security, privacy concerns, defining the strategy, integration complexity, etc. But skill staff, understanding the benefits, and data are the top ones that we're noticing. Now is the time of the fast followers in AI. So I always like to show what is called the hype cycle. Gartner has a hype cycle. If you look at the bottom of the hype cycle, we notice that we have a set of technologies which are in the innovation trigger phase, which are just coming to play. They might move into what is known as the peak of inflated expectations, which is, I would say, Bitcoin 2 or 3 years ago, where everybody's excited about the technology and they think that this technology is going to change the world. Then they move down in the curve, and only few of them reach the plateau of productivity, which is really where the technology is productive. A lot of the technologies might die here. And this is the AI curve. What we notice about the AI curve, it's very trigger heavy. That means a lot of technologies are being there, but not all of them have moved into the plateau of productivity, which we're seeing speech recognition, for example, at. And as you move forward in these ones, there's a couple of things that you need to notice about, and you need to remove some of the barriers. Some of these barriers are still not mature, but you need to address them very quickly. Some of these barriers are AI governance, explainable AI, and digital ethics. Explainable AI is basically having a model in AI that you are able to analyze if something goes wrong. So over 75% of large organizations will hire AI behavioral forensic, privacy, and customer trust specialists to reduce brand and reputational risks. So this is one of the things that you can accelerate in doing in order to remove barriers. Conversational AI remains at the top of the list. Other AIs are coming into play, but in conversational AI, such as data labeling, chatbots, user interfaces, virtual assistants, speech recognition, wireless speakers, they're all coming into play. And finally, compute infrastructures is going to change and is here to stay. So we're going to notice a lot of changes in the compute infrastructure, because the stronger the compute infrastructure, the stronger we're able to adopt AI. So we're starting to hear about quantum computing again, deep neural networks coming into play. So these are some of the things that are moving forward. Now, I mentioned that you're still not late in adopting AI if you haven't started. And the reason for that is when you look at AI, you need to look about 2 or 3 hype cycles combined. You need to look at the machine learning hype cycle and the data science and the data management hype cycle. We noticed that the data management hype cycle is in the plateau of productivity. A lot of technologies are now available. Machine learning data science is less, and AI is even lesser. Now, it's moving very fast, that's for sure, but still, there's a lot of technologies that have to improve their business outcome. But be careful, it is moving very fast. If you track it, and we will notice in 2020 that a lot of the technologies here are actually going to move here quite quickly. Where to start? This is another journey for you if you want to view it in a different angle, but where you start is by the ideation phase, then evaluating the risk and the business case, the prototype, and finally moving into a successful AI deployment. But this involves a lot of enablers, from skills, funding, governance, having a proper network of excellence, having the right data all across the pipeline, from the ML project pipeline, data integration, data exploration, machine learning, testing, deployment needs to be there, and finally having the right outcome. And then continuous improvement goes in the way. I'll try to wrap up in 5 minutes to open the floor for questions. So there's a couple of pitfalls that you need to be aligned or you need to be aware of internally. And these pitfalls are critical when implementing an AI strategy. The risk of AI comes from operational breakdowns, financial risk on not getting the return on investment, information risk, partner risk, privacy risk, legal risk, and brand risk are key. A lot of entities are not implementing AI because they're afraid of the brand risk. And when you innovate, you need to be aware that this comes with a particular brand risk to you. Geopolitical risk, market risk, and communication risk. Finally, we recommend as well to have a center of excellence for AI that manages the AI. The center of excellence has 4 different forms, and depending on what you want out of it, you can decide to be more persuasive, more enforceful, more innovative, or more informative. Now, in terms of workers, actually workers prefer to have AI assist rather than manage their work. So, and this is critical. We need to always approach AI from an augmentation perspective coupled with a culture change program in order to make it work. If AI is here to replace the worker, most probably it might not be as successful as you want it to be. Whereas AI programs that came with the angle to augment the worker, make sure that all the non-value repetitive tasks that are quite boring to do are moved to the AI, and really we focus on the right value adding task, is getting a lot of traction and having better success rates. So some lessons learned, you need to aim for soft outcomes. Initially, when you deploy POCs, aim for soft outcomes that are visible, that people can relate to, such as improvement in processes, maybe some benchmarking activities, customer satisfaction. Don't go for the very hard outcomes, especially in the POC phase, because if you don't attain them, this can create a negative impact on AI. We mentioned worker augmentation. That's very important. Ensure there's a lot of planning for knowledge transfer between you and the partners that you're working on. And finally, choose an AI solution that offers means of tracking and revealing why a decision might have went wrong. Make sure you know explainable AIs, that you have a clear audit trail in them. The last thing that I would like to leave you when it comes to AI lessons learned is um, we noticed that a lot of the AI projects are taking a longer phase to implement than initially planned. So when you plan your AI project, account for delays, like any new innovative technology that you are deploying. So we noticed that initially they were expecting the project launch to take a particular time, but they're still planning and piloting maybe when they expected the project to be live and in production. So just take that into consideration and don't be frustrated if the AI takes slightly longer to implement. So that's in a nutshell from my side. Sultan, back to you for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I don't know if your conclusion by saying don't be frustrated will help, because the first thing that I see here from Mariam saying it's really scary that all your devices will predict what your next steps will be based on your past. So we hope that we won't be scared in the future and things will go to the favor of the humanity. I want to start with a question. So looking at the current market, as you rightly mentioned, that there isn't enough AI skills. So what if I want, or like we all know that, I mean, in the UAE there is the Mohammed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence. This is a very good start where people can go and get specialized in this. The mission and the vision of the university is to elevate the skills required in that domain and in the smarter era. So, but not all of us or not everyone will join the university to get that skill. So, how do you think? What are the best AI skills? So, if people want to like be informed, get them moving with the technology changes, and I mean, be ready for the next phase.
Yeah. So there's a lot of data analytics and AI skills that are currently in the market, from data architects to data stewards. So there's a multitude of things, but it is important. So I'll take this in two angles. One angle, it is important first for the ecosystem in general to work together to develop these skills and to identify what is needed for the particular country. What I mean by that is it is important for entities, government entities, as well as companies, when they have new AI project to partner with universities, institutions, in order to develop that project. This enables a two-way learning street. It enables the universities and the educational institutions to build the right AI capabilities, which are in line with the market requirements. And at the same time, it enables the institutions themselves to benefit from the latest developments in the educational institutes. So one way is to look into partnerships in order to help identify and to build the right AI capabilities. That would be a very important angle. The second angle is you need, as an entity, to upskill your employees. AI is part of the culture change when you move into digitization. It's a core component in digital. You cannot digitize without AI. So from that perspective, it is quite important that entities launch an AI data literacy program and an AI literacy program in order to educate on the minimum skills required to use the AI as a start, as well as to educate them on how to develop the AI.
Thank you, Joe. I have a question here on from Dr. Luay. What about incorporating AI into an organization? What is the best practice? Are they part of IT? Are they under a CIO? Or are they completely independent? Since this is still new organizations, do not really know where the best place would be.
So I will take the the consulting answer to that. It depends. And it really depends on the organization and the role of the IT, as well if the organization has a separate unit which is addressing digital or digital is under the IT. So the primary phase, I would say, is to have a center of excellence and or to have a team that either within the IT or the digital organization that is handling innovative technologies. And in this team, you need to establish a center of excellence. The center of excellence, as we've mentioned, is a critical part in order to govern AI. I've seen a lot of models. I've seen models where you notice that AI is part of the innovation team. It could be a blended team between the business units as well as the technical team reporting to the IT. It really depends. But what you need to start thinking about is looking at your organization, looking at your innovation team. Where does it stand? Enacting a center of excellence for AI, and then putting that center of excellence in an area where it can drive AI forward, and it can drive AI forward in coordination with the business units, in coordination with the technical team, and in coordination with all the stakeholders involved. I know this is not the perfect answer, but when it comes to organization structures and governance, there is no one size fits all. Even if we look at our governance structure and the COE inside the that we recommend as Gartner, there's 4 models for the COE for AI, and each model would work for a particular organization.
Thank you. A question from Jamin. Will AI governance fall under the larger data governance scope of work, or it is a separate independent stream on its own?
Again, this would depend on the maturity of the organization as well as the actual org structure. It is hard to give a generic outcome for that. It will really depend on the actual organization. Where are you in the data analytics? How do you structure your new technologies rollout? Who is responsible for that? How's your team structure? It requires a bit of further analysis and understanding of the actual organization and the DNA of the company or the entity that is rolling out AI.
Okay. A question from Muhammad. He's asking if you can provide some examples on ideas on how to use AI in crisis management and business continuity. Probably something that's been recently used during the COVID.
Yes, sure. There's a lot of ways that AI is being used in COVID. AI, as I mentioned during, for example, in a lot of the countries, they're using AI and robotics in the healthcare sector in order to provide prescriptions to people with COVID. So instead of having the nurse going there and providing the prescriptions and the tests, an AI robot is doing there. This reduces a lot the impact of contamination that could happen. So that's one of that's a use case in the healthcare sector that you are seeing. Another use case, we are noticing that in certain areas where maybe transportation is hard to reach, or the areas that are locked, in order to deliver supplies to it, drones, robots are being used in order to deliver supplies. Another area that you can use AI is in terms of contact tracing. So AI being able to manage data from different sources, from CCTV cameras. So if you identified an individual with COVID and you wanted to check who he has touched or who has interacted with in the past week or time duration, you can use AI in order to track all of the movements, as well as to identify who is the individuals he has come in contact with, in order to advise them to go to test and to give them a heads up that they've come in contact with somebody with COVID. So these are a couple of use cases. There's a lot of other use cases that are being used. Some of the use cases in preliminary diagnosis of AI. So for example, of COVID. So you can use chatbots or AI healthcare assistants that can directly come and ask the patient a couple of questions and do a preliminary diagnosis if he needs to do a test for AI. That's 3 or 4 use cases. We can go on, but I know there's other questions that are popping up, and we still have 2 or 3 minutes to wrap up the session.
Yeah.
So I can take one more question, and for any additional questions, Sultan, we're more than happy to gather these and align on the best way to address these.
Agree, Joe. We're already running out of time, and I was planning to get 2 questions, but I believe for the sake of time, we'll get only 1. I agree with you. So a question from Farouk. Which software tool do you prefer to use to manage, monitor, or deploy your AI application? Is it AWS from Amazon, Google Cloud Services, or Microsoft Azure? I know this is probably tricky for you, but you're independent.
I am an independent. I'm an independent, and for the sake of, since this is a webinar session, what I would recommend is to go to Gartner.
So please tell me not in public. Not in public. Yeah.
There's a magic quadrant in Gartner that recommends for the different AI, data analytics, data management, machine learning tools. What are the preferred or what are some of the prioritized vendors? And there's also a critical capability tool, which depending on what you are looking from that particular tool, it can prioritize your vendors. Stephanie will be more than happy after that to work with you on your particular requirements and provide a different context. For the sake of this session, I prefer not to provide a direct answer.
I tried to put you on spot, but you managed, Joe.
Because in addition to the research and to the Magic Quadrant, because the Magic Quadrant even gives recommendation based on a certain criteria. So what we do is we evaluate what you are trying to do from business objectives. We evaluate your environment and everything, and then we recommend. There's no one size fits all.
So to conclude, Joe, like you've referred to the Magic Quadrant, does Gartner publish studies that companies can review to help them in better understanding use of AI?
Yes, we have a lot of studies that all of the things that you've seen in this report or in this presentation are basically from Gartner material. And there's multitude of reports related to AI that can help you in developing the strategy, as well as in selecting the vendors, rolling out the RFPs, more importantly, making sure you have the right use cases which are linked to a proper business outcome, and governing AI in addition to having the right policies and data ethics policies that are needed. So there's a lot of material. And what you're seeing in this presentation is from at least, I would say, 10 or 12 research notes that we have on the topic.
That's great. I want to thank you for your time, Joe and Stephanie. It has been really amazing 3 sessions. It's a pleasure to speak with you and discuss all those tech topics. It all went very well. I hope that the audience have as well utilized this and leveraged the insights that you've been providing. And that's it for me. And I don't know if you have any closing words before I refer to next week's sessions. Please feel free.
I would like to thank everyone for attending and from taking from your time. And please, if anyone has any questions or would like to get in touch with us, please do so, and we'll be glad to help. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for inviting us for these talks. It was a pleasure for me. Thanks again.
Thank you again, Joe and Stephanie. Thanks for all the attendees. For next week, we'll be having 2 sessions with PwC and Deloitte. We'll start the week on Sunday with PwC on practical responses to the business disruption of COVID-19. And on Tuesday, we'll discuss with Deloitte fast-track M&A responding to COVID-19. Until then, stay safe and have a good week ahead. Have a good day. Bye.